So how do you prevent this energy feeding from taking place? How do you stop others from feeding on you or you feeding on them? It's really, really easy. You make a conscious choice. Make a conscious choice to stop. You don't have to do any fancy ceremonies. You don't have to do anything else. Just make a conscious choice, a very clear, conscious choice. I want the feeding to stop. No more feeding. And then what's going to happen is start being aware of when people are taking your energy and start being aware of when you're taking others. And it will start to become very, very obvious. Little things like you're suddenly watching the news one night and you'll suddenly say, I'm being fed on by the news. It does that. It really does, because there's a lot of drama in the news. And even though it's not a person, it's a kind of a mass consciousness that's literally feeding on you. Creates anxiety. I can't remember the last time I watched the news and felt happy. Creates anxiety, confusion, disorientation, doubt. There is a feeding going on. And again, it's not intentional, but it's just the way things are. You start to become aware when other people, one of the common signs is when you're talking to somebody and they keep grabbing your arm and you're kind of like trying to kind of back away a little bit to, maintain your space, and they're just grabbing your arm or kind of blocking you so you can't move at all. Well, that's feeding. You'll start becoming aware of when people are doing it. So again, make that conscious choice to stop the feeding. But as you make a conscious choice that you're no longer going to be in this, you start actually disconnecting from the game. You disconnect from the game. Well, what's going to happen is the feeders are going to sense that within you, and they're actually going to try to probe harder at first. Like, hey, what's wrong with this person? They've always been a kind of a meatloaf dinner for me, and now I'm not getting anything. So they're going to probe a little harder. Just keep breathing. You don't have to do white light around you. You don't have to, wear any special clothing or do any special things. It's just about a conscious choice. They're going to actually back away. They're going to go find somebody else to feed off of because you've disconnected from the game. And then anytime that you feel the need to feed, I like that, the need to feed. Anytime that you feel that you have to kind of get that feeding from someone else, stop for a moment. Take a deep breath. Go within yourself. Remember what we said earlier? Everything that you need is already there. Your battery, your internal energy battery, recharges itself by itself. Doesn't need to go outside. Doesn't need to get it from another person. Doesn't need to get it from anywhere. It's already there. And if you don't believe it, at least try it. At least take a deep breath. At least go within. It's what we call the I am principle. It's already there within you. Once you re-acknowledge that, it's going to ignite that energy within you, and it's going to start growing, and you're going to realize you don't have to play the game, and others can't play it with you anymore. That is the simple, easy answer. I know that we could talk about this for a long, long time, but make a conscious choice to stop the cycle of feeding. Then start becoming aware when others are doing it. And that doesn't mean you have to suddenly stop them and say, hey, you're feeding off of me, because they're going to deny it. Just take a deep breath and just disconnect. In other words, they've got their, if you can imagine, kind of energy tentacles into you. And when they do, you have your tentacles into them as well in one way or the other. Just disconnect. Bring back those tentacles, release whatever they have into you. We're all sovereign beings. We've just kind of forgotten about it. We're all absolutely sovereign. We don't need to base our relationships on feeding. We don't need to base relationships on being victims and abusers. Everything that you have is already there. And it will change the way you relate to other people. It will change the way you relate to the world. The world's no longer going to be taking away from you. You don't need to take anything from the world. Can you imagine in this world if people started to recognize their own sovereignty, their own sense of self-love and self-worth, and this feeding cycle stopped? Oh, actually, this is a great opportunity to really bring the relationship with your children up to the next level, because you have been in a situation of feeding and being a feeder. When your children were brought into this world, into your life, they just picked up on that. They intuitively sensed that, and they got into that as well. But when you make a clear choice within yourself and say, I am that I am, I'm a sovereign being, I don't need to feed, they're going to sense that as well. It'll change the relationship you have with them. It's no longer, I guess the word would be, no longer codependent. And that's really what feeding is. Feeding is a codependency. So please take a look in your own life. Be aware at where the feeding is. Don't blame anyone. Don't blame yourself. Take a look at who you might be feeding on. And if you're ready, make a clear, conscious choice that people aren't going to be feeding, taking your energy anymore. Make a clear, conscious choice that you have everything within you already. You don't need to go anywhere else. The gift in this is that you're learning to become a sovereign being. You're learning to find the happiness within. You're learning to find that your own God self is within. You're learning to bring in all the various aspects of yourself that have been scattered all over. But yet this loneliness is persistent because you can continue to feel energies of family and friends and things that you've disconnected from. Again, a very, very common feeling. This is eventually replaced by the feeling of wholeness or completeness within yourself. The fact that you're not dependent on family or friends. You're not dependent on any orders or any organizations. Because you're not dependent on them, you're not feeding off of them.